This episode is brought to you by Bank of America. From a local business to a global corporation, partnering with Bank of America gives your operation access to exclusive digital tools, award-winning insights, and business solutions so powerful you'll make every move matter. Visit bankofamerica.com/bankingforbusiness to learn more. What would you like the power to do? Bank of America, N.A., copyright 2023.
Sally was so clearly on the page to me. Like, she was written so rhythmically. Like, it sounds funny, but I had to, quiet my own preconceived anything about who she is or who she's gonna be and listen to the rhythm of what is there.
Welcome back to Working. I'm your host, June Thomas.
And I'm your other host, Isaac Butler.
Isaac, I am always just delighted to have an opportunity to chat with you, but I am so fascinated by the voice that we heard at the top of the show that that's all I can think about. So who was that?
Well, I don't want to keep you in suspense.
Thank you.
For too long.
You're killing me,
June. But I'm sorry. Working listeners, June has actually died. I just have watched her collapse
I'm a ghost
on Zoom.
now.
Yeah, she's a ghost now. That was the voice of Sarah Goldberg, who plays Sally Reed on HBO's Barry. Now, for listeners out there who have not seen Barry, Barry is about a hitman who joins an acting class in Los Angeles run by this kind of charismatic ghoul named Gene Cousineau, played by the great Henry Winkler. And the star acting student of that class is this woman, Sally Reed, who's played by Sarah Goldberg. It's a really great show. It's funny. It's weird. It's dark. It goes to really unexpected places. And her performance, in some ways, really anchors it.
And why did you want to speak with her now?
Well, I think for a couple reasons. I've actually wanted to talk to her for 3 years, ever since we started doing the show, because I think her performance on that show is truly extraordinary. She's really the show's major find. Mm-hmm. Almost every other actor on that show is fairly well known from somewhere else. Robert F. Wisdom from The Wire, Stephen Root, the great Stephen Root from any number of things, Henry Winkler, Bill Hader, Fred Armisen even has a brief cameo this season, but she comes from a big stage background, and this is really her breakthrough role. Not her first TV role, but her breakthrough role. And she's extraordinary in it. And so I just really wanted to talk to her about it. But the second reason is that Barry is ending. And although we don't talk about the finale in this episode, among other reasons, because no one's allowed to see the finale and we're not allowed to talk about the finale. Ooh. I thought, what better time to air an interview with her than at the moment that we're actually saying goodbye to that character.
Very smart. Well, I am very excited to hear the interview, but I believe that today there will be an extra segment exclusively for Slate Plus members. What will they hear?
Yes, blasting straight into the ear holes of the subscribers of Slate Plus. As you know, the stage is my first love. It's Sarah Goldberg's first love, too. So we talk about the differences between stage acting and putting on plays in London versus New York, and the differences between stage acting and screen acting. And in fact, most importantly, how do you use the very brief amount of time you have to rehearse on a TV set when you're used to having weeks to do it preparing a play.
What a treat. If you're a member of Slate Plus, you'll hear that at the end of the episode. And if you aren't, it's really easy to join. As a member of Slate Plus, you will get to hear extra segments on this show, like the one we just described, and other shows such as The Waves and Culture Gabfest. You'll get bonus episodes of podcasts like Big Mood, Little Mood, and Apple's Podcast of the Year, Slow Burn, which has a new season starting on May 31st, by the way. And of course, you will never hit a paywall on Slate.com. To learn more, go to slate.com/workingplus. All right, let's hear Isaac's conversation with Sarah Goldberg.
Sarah Goldberg, thank you so much for joining us this week on Working to talk about your process.
Thank you for having me. It's so nice to meet you.
So let's maybe start close-ish to the beginning with training, right? You studied acting at the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art. What was it that made you choose that particular school out of all the acting schools in the English-speaking world?
Well, honestly, I really wanted to travel to London to go to school. I backpacked through Europe when I was 18, and I fell in love with London and the theater there, and I wanted to go to school there. And LAMDA was the only drama school that was still doing North American auditions, and they did a bit of a tour of cities. So they would go to New York and Toronto, and they went to Seattle. I grew up in Vancouver, so Seattle was a quick drive down. My dad drove me down for my audition. So really, it was kind of a little bit of a fluke that it ended up being LAMDA. I did have a drama teacher who went there as well, so I think it had always been in the back of my brain. But yeah, LAMDA was I did a 3-year conservatory training, so we went all the way back to Greek theater and worked our way up to modern text.
Yeah, what was the approach like there at LAMDA? Like, what's the core of that training?
The thing I loved about the training there was that they love to give you like a little taste of everything. So there is no real core ethos of this is how it's done, or this is a method school, or, they want you to have a chance to try everything out so that in your career, whatever you're faced with in an audition, or, you can at least say, well, I could give that a go. So, we had flamenco lessons, for example, which I can tell you I've never used. But I think it's sort of the idea of like trying something out that takes you out of your comfort zone, feeling like a bit of an idiot, getting over it, trying again. And for me, that was the right kind of training. I feel like, emotions have always come maybe too easily to me. But I wanted to try out Shakespeare and Chekhov and, all of these amazing old texts. And I wanted a chance to learn accents and, physicalities. And so for me, it was the right kind of training. Like some of it was a waste of time and some of it I still use today, like any training.
Yeah. What, did you have to learn how to fence?
I did. Well, we did have a very prestigious stage combat course. I don't know. I always had a doctor's note. I was always able to get out of that one. For me, it was like an extension of gym class, and I just did my best to get out of it.
You did say there were some parts of the training that you feel like you still use. Can I just ask what those are?
I mean, I think the main one, honestly, is this kind of fearlessness around embarrassing yourself and accepting that sometimes acting is very embarrassing. And, I might get an audition through or something that feels like it's out of reach for me. And it's getting over that hurdle and going, I can find something to bring to the table here. That's probably the main one. I think also heavier texts. Like they were very good at helping us break down text. And when we did Shakespeare on Barry, I felt like stuff that I'd learned way back at LAMDA was hugely helpful in terms of breaking down that famous tomorrow speech, and I felt like there was definitely a skill set that they left us with.
Is script analysis kind of where you start with a character? Is that what you start with, doing the beats, thinking about objectives and given circumstances and whatnot?
Yeah, I think it depends on the project, but mainly that's where I would start. And that is from real theater training, I think. And I worked with this incredible director, Dominic Cook, in the UK. We did Clybourne Park together over a decade ago. And he really broke that play down into all of these sections. We did it as a group, and we would find each beat, sort of name the beat, and then move on. And so what we had by the time we were trying to get the thing on its feet was, everybody was speaking the same language. We knew what the focal point of each section of that play was. And for an ensemble piece, that was so key and so important, so that everybody stayed focused on the beat that needed to be clear for the story to be told. So that is generally where I'd start. I mean, I think I'm sort of basic with my process, I've got to be honest. I read a script and I can feel it in my bones or I can't. I read the character out loud. I'll always read the character out loud fairly quickly, like almost as soon as it's in my inbox or my hands. And I'll know within a few lines if that character rhythmically lives inside me somewhere or not. It's just kind of an instinct that I'll have for something or not. And going back to what I said earlier, like if it's something that doesn't feel like a fit, that's not to say I won't go to bat and try, but I I'm not someone who thinks sort of every part is for everyone. It's like you connect to a piece of material or you don't in a real kind of chemistry way. And so if on that first read something's cooking, I start there and I don't overanalyze it. I try to just let the thing grow. And then it's who you're working with. And I really think that it's another thing that Dominic taught me, but like he would say, what you're doing is not interesting and what you're doing is not interesting. It's what is happening between you that I'm interested in. And so you can prepare in isolation, but ultimately, it's a team sport. And I feel like your work is only as good as what you're offering up to each other. And so much of it is just finding that chemistry between all of you as a group and making sure the story is clear between you.
When you get that script and the spark is not happening on that first read, you said that doesn't mean that you're necessarily not going to do the part. And particularly, I imagine earlier in your career, you have less of a choice over whether you're going to do a part that you're auditioning for and whatnot. What do you do to get that spark to happen? Because it strikes me that that's often where technique comes in, right? Is like, well, I'm not feeling it. So how do I get to the place where I'm feeling it? Or what do I do now that I don't have that ready-made inspiration?
Yeah, earlier in my career, I certainly didn't have a choice, and you'd put your hat in the ring for everything, The truth is, if that spark was really not there, I usually didn't get the part. That's not to say I didn't try. And you're absolutely right. Technique would come in then. So I remember I auditioned for Labette. I can't remember the name of the character now, but she's the one that doesn't speak. And oh my goodness, I read that script and I thought it was incredible, but I was so intimidated by it and I hadn't a clue what to do with it. And that is where my training came in handy. And I thought, okay, you can offer something up. And I put together this whole physical thing, failed spectacularly in my audition, did not get the part. But, I felt like I kind of, I gave it a go, and giving it a go always felt better than not giving it a go. But for me, that spark, like that moment you kind of connect to a character, it kind of has to be there for me. It's like something you're burning to do or a story you're burning to tell. And I think that comes through in your audition. It comes through in what you're offering up. And ultimately, that's usually ended up with me getting the job versus the ones where I've really given it a good old try with technique, put my voice training on it, give it a go. But I think that initial meet of that character, it's something that is kind of in my stomach or not.
Obviously, our listeners probably know your work from Barry, from the TV show Barry, in which you play Sally. It's currently in its final season, but to rewind, you've got that spark clearly in the role, I would imagine, from the first read. How did you set about creating that role? Are there people she's based on? Is there voice or physical stuff you were doing? Or, once you're sort of trying to make this from words on a page to a human being, what were those kind of early steps?
Sally was so clearly on the page to me. Like, she was written so rhythmically. Like, there was a musicality to the way that script was written, and there was a rhythm to the comedy. And so I suppose, and by the way, every time I feel the spark, it's not like that's a mutual thing. There's plenty of times right. I feel the spark on the script, do not get the job. But, with Sally, I had a feeling in my bones, like I know who this woman is. I know who she is. So it sounds funny, but I had to quiet my own preconceived anything about who she is or who she's going to be and listen to the rhythm of what is there. And when I could hear that and then bring that out loud, it was like she existed in the room. I know this sounds sort of not tangible. I'm trying to say something that might be helpful to another actor, and this is just my own strange process. But I felt like I listened to that rhythm. I said the words out loud, and I thought, okay, this is who this woman is. And then from there, we had a baseline. And for years, we've been making the show 7 years, and in that time, that character has run a pretty crazy arc, and the show changes genre, goes from comedy to drama, sometimes more to horror, thriller. So there's preparation that goes into when the tone changes. It's a very elastic tone for a half-hour comedy. And so some of the preparation for Sally is really about figuring out what the tone of that episode is, and without abandoning the character, figuring out how to meet that. And Sally is a really fun character because there's so many characters within the character. Because she's an actress, there's audition scenes she gets to do. There's her own TV show, or there's Shakespeare, or, in this recent season, she's, living under a different persona. So, there's been so many things I've been able to do within the role, and each of those has taken, slightly different kind of preparation. Some days it's like we're going to improv a scene and, we've got the bones in place, but we can kind of wing it. Other days it's a much more technical day. There's a huge speech and every beat needs to be hit, so that takes a different kind of prep. So I think it was sort of rising to the occasion each time as the show changed, to make sure that, I was ready for a work day.
Yeah, I mean, you speak to kind of the elastic tone and genre of the show. How do you prepare when you're like, okay, this week's episode, Sally's in a thriller.
Yeah.
Last week she was in a farce. This week she's in a thriller, essentially. What does that preparation look like? Is it like you go and watch a bunch of 70s thrillers or something? Or is it, how do you clue into style like that without abandoning the core of the character?
I don't know. I mean, it would depend on what it was. So for example,
right.
In season 2, I had a big monologue and at the end of the season, and it was very much written like its own mini play. So I prepared that the way I would prepare a play. I rehearsed it backwards and forwards, inside out. I found a rhythm with what I was doing, and I, had it deeply in my bones. Like if I had to do that 8 times a week, I could do it,
I am so jealous that you're reading for this. I have never had a director's session for a feature, which is the same thing as a movie, P.S. And I have been doing this for way longer, and I think you'd agree that I am way better. I made you, and
it was in one take, right? Wasn't that? It was like 1 5-minute.
I was told way in advance when we started the season, I was told it was going to be 1 take. That wasn't something that we decided on the day. That was, and sometimes Bill will do that. Sometimes we'll be shooting a scene and we were going to get all regular coverage, and then he sees something really works in a oneer. So that's how we end up shooting it. But with this, I was prepared that it was going to be in 1 take. And, he said to me early in the season, we're going to write like a 7-page monologue for you, and we're just going to hold the camera and you're just going to talk. And I was like, great, thinking that's going to get cut, but I'm going to have fun doing it. I prepared it, like a play. And then, it was 1 take. I think we did 4 takes in the end. And we did 2, and they're like, we got it. I was like, guys, I've worked so hard on this. Please, can we have 2 more? I never asked for more takes, but that was one that I was like, I need to enjoy this. And I feel like the first 2 are like the nervy ones, you got to get those out. And then 3 and 4 were the more sort of enjoyable ones. It was such a special thing to get to do that in television. And I thought, okay, so this is a theatrical tone. This is what this needs. And later in the season, as it, gets more into thriller and horror and heavier drama, I mean, the clues are in the text, right? It's like they're great writers. We can trust each other. I can trust on set that we were working with the best camera team, the best lighting team, so some of that genre is going to be taken care of for you. And I feel like my job is to really understand the text and commit to the tone within the words, really. And you have to sort of trust that you're walking towards something that fits that genre without overthinking it, because you'll throw yourself. So really, I think it was about committing truthfully to each beat, and the genre would sort of take care of itself. Mm.
We'll be back with more of Isaac's conversation with Sarah Goldberg.
This episode is brought to you by Bank of America. If you own or operate a business, whether it's a local operation or a global corporation, partnering with Bank of America could be your smartest move. By teaming with Bank of America, you'll enjoy exclusive digital tools, award-winning insights, and business solutions so powerful you'll make every move matter. Position your business to capitalize on opportunity in a moment's notice. Visit bankofamerica.com/banking for business to learn more. What would you like the power to do? Bank of America N.A. Copyright 2023. This episode is brought to you by Bank of America. If you own or operate a business, whether it's a local operation or a global corporation, partnering with Bank of America could be your smartest move. By teaming with Bank of America, you'll enjoy exclusive digital tools, award-winning insights, and business solutions so powerful you'll make every move matter. Position your business to capitalize on opportunity in a moment's notice. Visit bankofamerica.com/banking for business to learn more. What would you like the power to do? Bank of America N.A. Copyright 2023.
Listeners, we want to hear from you. Every other Thursday on Working Overtime, we answer listener questions. So please tell us your creative challenges and let us help you solve them. Drop us a line at working@slate.com. You can also send us a voice memo to that address or give us a ring at 304-933-WORK and leave a voicemail. And if you're enjoying this episode, don't forget to subscribe to Working wherever you get your podcasts. Now let's return to Isaac's conversation with Sarah Goldberg.
You know, you talking about the extra takes brings up something that, you know, actors I've talked to and actors who've written memoirs also talk about this as they go from stage to screen. You know, the shift between playing the entirety of a role over 2 hours from start to finish and managing that to doing things out of order, repeating them over and over and again for takes, you know, often having to hit very specific physical positions because of camera and stuff. Was that a tough adjustment for you when you were starting out?
That was the toughest adjustment, and that was the thing I missed the most in the beginning, which is, you know, you do a play, there's nothing like it. You're telling the story from start to finish, live in a room full of people. All phones are off. Everybody's focused on the same thing, and there's an energy to that, and it's an energy that you really feed off of on stage. And, you know, the satisfaction of telling the whole story in one go and it being collectively shared and witnessed, it's intoxicating. It's why so many actors go back to the stage. It's the most joyful place in the world. And once I started film and TV, I mean, to begin with, I was terrified of the camera. So when I was working in theater in my 20s, I thought, I'll never work on TV. That's it. That's fine. I'm a stage actor. I'll be broke, but I'll be happy. It will be fine. And I got my first big TV job when I was in my late 20s. It was a TV show called Hindsight. And the only reason I got that job was I went into the audition, and the casting director, Mark Sachs, who was always lovely to me, even though I was always coming in a nervous wreck into his office, I went into the audition, and he had kidney stones. He was doubled over in pain. I was like, Mark, are you okay? He's like, well, I have kidney stones, but I'll be fine. I was like, Mark, you have to go to the hospital. Like, we do not need to make this tape. You have to go to the hospital. He's like, no. Let's just get the take, and then I promise you I'll go to the hospital. I was like, no, I think you need to go to the hospital. Anyway, he convinced me to do the scenes. And obviously, I was so focused on him and concerned for him, I completely forgot myself, forgot my nerves, and just went for it on the scenes. And I ended up getting that job. And so I think that, and then Hindsight was an amazing training ground because it was 16 hours a day, you know, on camera every day, 5 days a week. I learned so much technically. It was really, really challenging. And I initially, I was afraid of the camera. Everything was there was so much machinery, you know, there's a boom, there's a body mic, there's lights in your face, there's all these distractions. And I think what was challenging was focusing. It took me a long time to find my focus. And I think, you know, sort of being able to just have that quiet in your own mind and not being afraid to take up a little bit of space within the character. So I learned that as I went, and the chronology of it all, when, you know, you're starting, I mean, even this season of Barry, the first scene I shot was the end of episode 4. When I say, let's go to Barry, that was the very first thing I shot of season 4. We haven't built any of these stepping stones. You know, we haven't had the scene in prison. We haven't felt these things in our bones to get to this beat. So you really have to rely on your imagination. And I think it's important that you go back through the story and remember, okay, we did this, then we did this, we did that, and now this is going to, you know, pitch here because of everywhere we've come before. And for me, it just took practice, I think, to also have the confidence to pitch something as heightened as it needs to be without all those stepping stones there, like in your bones, and understanding how so much magic happens in the edit, and you're sort of providing all these little puzzle pieces. And I think once you relax into that and realize like each moment is this little piece, and eventually someone's going to sit in a dark room for an insane amount of time and make magic out of this, you know, you can relax into, okay, all I need to focus on is this tiny little moment and give this moment my full attention. And it can be really liberating. The pressure's kind of off because you can just live really in that moment. And if you make a mistake, you can do it again, you know? And if you want to try something and take a big swing and miss, you can. So that I started to relax into the joys of what the medium can actually offer instead of just, lamenting and missing the beautiful parts of theater. I tried to find the magic in making TV.
You know, Shelley Winters talked about that a lot. She said, how do we do our job in front of all that machinery? She actually used that phrase, all that machinery. So that was her big thing, was that she found it very hard to do even late in her career.
It's so hard. And, you know, the last 2 seasons of Barry, we had the most extraordinary camera A-op in the business. His name is Don Devine, really lives up to the name. And, you know, he was such an incredible artist. And, you know, on Barry, we do so many close-ups, like insane close-ups, where you're actually acting to a small piece of tape inside the map box. You're not even looking at the other actor. And so you're really working with Don more closely in many cases than the other actor. So whenever I'd get nervous or I'd feel the machinery was somehow interfering, I would just go, you're just waltzing with Don. You're just waltzing with Don. And again, like finding the connectivity with the human, but behind the machine, you know, and his focus is as intense as my focus. And, you know, that we're building this thing together. For me, that really took the pressure off and I stopped seeing the machine.
Right. You know, one thing that's sort of a part of Sally's arc in that first season is that she becomes a good actor, right? Or she drops the artifice that's getting in the way when she has that moment of the Shakespeare moment at the end of the season, right? When she it unlocks something more truthful in her, right?
It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing.
Similarly, there's plenty of moments beyond that where, you know, Sally or any of the characters are viewed with a certain level of irony by the show, right? Do you worry about that as an actor? Do you feel, do you consider that part of your job to create that little bit of irony? Or are you like, the camera is doing that, the text is doing that, I just have to play this moment sincerely?
Yeah, I think all of us, you know, have felt throughout the years, you know, within this elastic tone and all the zany things that we've done over the years, that we have to just commit honestly to what the character is doing in that moment. And we can't really think too much about the outside eye on it or what the commentary is on it. You know, maybe you're reading the script as an audience member with an outside eye and you're reading the whole piece and you can kind of see that and make those judgments and laugh at the expense of these characters. But when you're within it, you know, you can't really send them up or the comedy falls flat. So, and Sally has such a guileless quality to her, at least she did in the earlier seasons. That's been washed right off with nail polish remover. She's barely has skin left at this point. But, you know, I feel like in those early seasons, that guileless quality was really a key entry point to her. And I always said, you know, there's of course there's a cruelty to Sally and she says these really nasty things, but it's not calculated cruelty. She's not considering other people enough to think it through enough to say these cruel things. It's just coming into her head and coming out. That is really fun to play. You know, it's because she often says and does the wrong thing, which is more fun to play than doing the right thing or the kind thing or the easy thing. You know, there was so much talk about, you know, Sally's likability or dislikability, and never, ever, ever even occurred to me. I mean, when have you ever gone to a dinner party and the next day you've gone, oh God, he was so likable or she was so likable. It's like, it's not an adjective that we even use in life. And it's only a barometer that we use on women on TV. We never talk about likability or dislikability with male characters. And I always said, you don't have to like her, you have to know her. I know this woman. And if you believe her and you know her, that's enough for me. I don't care if you like her. There's times that I didn't like her. There's times that I did. She's somebody in the world who's really trying, gets it really wrong. But the fact that she's trying, always left like lots of really fruitful stuff to play.
I remember when I was in maybe middle school, maybe freshman in high school, I went to see the novelist Tim O'Brien read because he had a new novel. The guy who wrote The Things They Carried, and he had a new novel out, and he had gotten some pushback on the unlikability of the narrator. This was his book Tomcat in Love, and he in talking about it, he really lost his temper. It was really fascinating to watch, and I remember him saying, "Well, excuse me, but would you want to have a dinner with Lady Macbeth? I don't think so."
Yeah.
It was an important thing for me to hear when I was like a freshman in high school from a writer I greatly admired, that likability is really, it's a trap and it's horse shit when you're talking about the creating of art.
Well, exactly. And also, Barry is a show about morality, and it's a show about people making bad decisions and how many bad decisions makes you a bad person. There's sort of a thesis for all the characters of which, really comes to a head in this final season, which is am I a good person? Am I a bad person? And how are you supposed to explore those themes or present that to an audience with everyone being likable? I always found it fascinating, especially on a show where everybody else was killing everyone. And I was just saying a few sort of mean things. But, Sally was the one that was sort of fixated on. And so, there's definitely gender involved, which I found fascinating and I was sort of anticipating. And so I really fought for her, through the seasons of we cannot listen to those voices. I'm not on social media anyway, so I didn't have to see any of the garbage. But I just didn't want any of that to dictate who this person is. This is somebody who is complex, morally bankrupt in some ways, just like her male counterparts on the show. And we need to explore in that murky territory. It's going to be a lot more fun to watch. And also, we can explore much more interesting themes, I didn't want her to ever just be the girlfriend role. And luckily, that's not what Bill or Alec wanted either. So we managed to steer clear of those cliches.
Sally, as a character, really does have to go to some very ugly places and also some huge emotional places. Obviously the elevator scene with Darcy Carden that becomes a sort of running joke on the show.
You have nothing to say about anything. You've never struggled a day in your whole fucking life.
You mentioned earlier that emotions come pretty easily to you for an actor, but I'm just wondering about how you prepare for that. Some people do a lot of sense memory work. Some people have a poem that they read that gets them into the moment or whatever it is. What's your emotional preparation like?
It often depends what it is, but as I'm getting older, the thing I'm trying to do is trust myself that it's going to exist between action and cut. And I actually find that the less I think about it and the less I work myself up for it or sort of try to get into any kind of state ahead of time, the better. I kind of like to keep things really light and buoyant and joke around and kind of keep very much in the present between takes in order to conserve energy and sort of also protect my mental health. I was pretty nervous for that scene with Darcy. And I also find anger, I do say emotions come easily to me. I'm not sure what that says about me. But, anger is a hard one. I feel like, female rage is something I'm fascinated by. And I feel like, growing up, women or girls my, age in my generation, we were never encouraged to really release any kind of anger. And that was seen as an ugly thing. And it took getting to my adult years and through lots of therapy to realize I don't actually have access to anger. It's not, but it's in there. It's definitely in there. So a scene like that, honestly, I just saw it as an opportunity. I thought Bill's going to call action, and I'm just going to let my body release something, and trust that something's going to come out, and you can't be too big. And, the beauty on the Barry set was like, you can't really fail. There was a lot of trust we all had in each other, and you can go again. So yeah, I feel like with those huge emotional moments, again, it's about focus and collective focus and just trusting yourself in the moment that we all have access to these parts of ourselves. We all have it somewhere, and allowing your kind of yielding and letting go of any kind of embarrassment in order to have like a free channel that can come out.
One rhyme between you and the character on some level is, the sudden achievement of success and fame after a lot of really hard work, right? But, part of what is going on over the course of season 3, especially, is how destabilizing it is to suddenly be a public figure or to suddenly have a certain place in the industry and everything like that. And I'm just wondering how you yourself guarded against that or handled it, because obviously you haven't gone crazy. So, just about, your relationship to fame, I'm sure, is very different than the characters, and just sort of how you've navigated that and how that's affected you as an artist to suddenly be much more in the public eye than you were before.
Well, I feel lucky that any kind of visibility like that happened to me just a little bit later in life. I think it would have been a lot more destabilizing had it happened in my early 20s. I feel I read this interview with Christina Applegate that was like, what's the secret to your success? Or what's the secret to the longevity of your career? And she says, moderate success. And I think that, there's something around, Barry is a show that we're lucky enough to have a large audience for. But I still have my anonymity. Like I took the subway yesterday, and moving to London has really helped. And that, I don't often get recognized. And usually when I do, people are really kind and they just want to say, I really love the show. And I appreciate that. There have been a few times that I've been nervous, and there's been someone who's really crossed a personal boundary, and you just kind of learn how to protect yourself in those moments. But I feel like, I hope I've struck a kind of balance where I can still live my life and also do what I love. And, you need a certain amount of success and visibility in this business in order to sustain a long career. Unfortunately, that's kind of part of the deal, it feels like, in order to keep working. So there's a bit of an exchange there. But I don't feel that mine has crossed over into any kind of hysteria. And I have seen that happen to friends. And it's a rough ride. It's a pretty intense deal, that one. And you gain a lot in your career, but you lose a lot of personal freedoms. And I feel like I've been really lucky and found a kind of sweet spot.
Yeah. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us here on Working to talk about your process.
Thank you so much, Isaac. I really appreciate your very intelligent questions.
Aw, shucks.
Up next, Isaac and I will talk about artistic training and how we can all learn to make the most of our talents and interests.
At the end of your first year, Discover credit cards automatically double all the cash back you've earned. That's right, everything you earned doubled. All the cash back from eating at your favorite soup dumpling restaurant doubled. All the cash back from that trip where you sort of learned to snowboard also doubled. And the best part, you don't have to do anything ridiculous to get it. Nope, Discover does it automatically. Seriously though, see terms and check it out for yourself at discover.com/match. At the end of your first year, Discover credit cards automatically double all the cash back you've earned. That's right, everything you earned doubled. All the cash back from eating at your favorite soup dumpling restaurant doubled. All the cash back from that trip where you sort of learned to snowboard also doubled. And the best part, you don't have to do anything ridiculous to get it. Nope, Discover does it automatically. Seriously though, see terms and check it out for yourself at discover.com/match.
Isaac, you know that I love an Isaac Gets Processy with Actors interview, and that was a great one.
Aw, thanks.
Before we get to the nuts and bolts of the interview, given your deep knowledge of the way actors prepare and train, after all, that's an important thread in your amazing book, The Method, I'm curious how well you think Barry presents the world of acting and the teaching of acting, And I'm going to give you a second question before you get a chance to answer the first one. Did you enjoy the show? I mean, you kind of had to watch it, right? Because it's your beat. Did you actually get to experience pleasure from it?
Oh, yeah, I loved the show. I love Barry. I love it in general, and I really love its presentation of the world of acting, which I should say, over the course of the last couple seasons, that becomes less and less the focus of the show. The show becomes focused on other things, but, you know, its first two seasons are very much set in the world of that acting class and then in the various kind of crime families around Los Angeles. I actually wrote a piece about Barry and acting class for Slate during the show's second season. Maybe we can put that on the show page. I would say its treatment of acting and of Hollywood and of how acting teachers work and everything is parodic. I mean, you know, it is a showbiz satire and a crime thriller at the same time, right? But it's clearly heavily researched. And I will say, for method history heads, I should tell you, Henry Winkler studied with Stella Adler at Yale when he was a grad student at Yale. And the character of Jean Cousineau is in part based on her. And some of the scenes where he's doing acting exercises with Barry in the first season are actually based on his experiences in her acting class.
That's amazing. I was also really struck by what Sarah had to say about how hard it is to be a TV actor. As you pointed out, they're usually taping out of sequence, so it's hard to find the emotional moment. As Sarah noted, they're often closer to the camera and the camera operator than to their scene partner. She said the best way to learn how to be a good TV actor is to be cast in a network-style TV show where you get a lot of reps and develop the skills by doing it. And I have to say, that answer made me wonder if we give far too much credit to stage acting. I mean, PR people will stress that someone is a classically trained actor and talk about their stage experience. But now I'm thinking maybe we should make more of people who have done seasons and seasons of television, because maybe that's more challenging and something we should be more impressed by. Talk me down, Isaac. Talk me down.
Well, I have never acted on television, right?
No.
You know, so
Me neither.
I can't speak to my own experience, but most actors that you talk to will tell you that once you get the hang of film and TV acting, it's much easier than stage acting. Whereas stage acting, if you're really committed to it, never gets any easier on some level. You know, now Sarah didn't say that. I also didn't ask her about it, but that was not her perspective. But I'm just saying, for most actors I've spoken to, the stage is the real mountain to climb. There are particular challenges to TV and film. If you're on a network season of TV, you're doing that like 9 months out of the year, right? It's exhausting. It's very boring. A lot of it is just sitting waiting to go on screen. You are, the actor is often the least important part of the process. Lighting and camera angles, all that stuff's much more important. But, you know, at the same time, the stage is the real mountain to climb, because the idea of having to give one coherent performance over a couple of hours is seen as much more difficult. In the 20th century, film and TV acting were really looked down upon by a lot of teachers and actors as not real acting. Like, even if you read the memoirs of people who were famous film actors, you know, they sort of denigrate it. It's the thing you do for money and fame, whereas theater is art. Now, that has changed recently, that attitude, and I think that's a good thing. I want to make it very clear, I'm not denigrating film and TV acting. The challenges of theater are unique, though, and when you're on stage, you know, you don't have a lot of support. You can't yell cut. It's you and the other actors, and so I think it's got its unique challenges. Yeah, and you really, I mean, again, that's something that Sarah said, that you just inhabit that playwright. If you're doing it 8 times a week for however many weeks, like, that is something that's going to be in your bones. And that's got to be, unless you truly hate what you're doing, you know, the play that's got to be just a tremendous artistic experience just to really, you know, sink into something that way. That's got to be amazing. Yeah. When you asked her how she prepared for the big emotional scenes that she's called upon to perform, it was interesting to hear her talk about needing to protect her mental health and her energy. I mean, it's wonderful to hear that's something she's thinking about. But I also realize that's really hard for a performer, for a lot of people. There are so many times when we ask people to really get stuck into something that's very hard. You know, that could be an acting gig where doing your job requires an actor to experience and relive and really get close to
really damaging emotion. But I can also think of cases where writers have effectively been beset by PTSD because they're covering trauma and feel they have to immerse themselves in it for their job. Do you have any advice on that situation? Like, how can you protect yourself? She made it sound easy, and I really don't think it is.
No, I don't think it's easy. And, most actors I talk to, I mean, some of them it's very easy, it just doesn't get to them. That's not part of their process, and that's fine. But different actors work in different ways, and there's no right or wrong way to do it so long as you're not abusing the people you work with, right? Yeah. But no matter what, I do think that this is where technique comes in and is extremely important. If you're just relying on your own impulses and your talent, even if it's considerable, you're really going to get in trouble. And I might feel that way because that really did happen to me in high school and college. I discussed this in the intro to the method. And that's part of why I never pursued acting as an adult, because I just realized I wasn't actually tough enough to do it. Actors have to be tough, and then they also have to be vulnerable. You could see why there's a certain crazy making dynamic there.
Yes.
I do think, however, to get back to my big point, it is important to learn technique. Technique can help you realize those moments safely. For some people, that technique's just going to come from working all the time. That technique comes from experience, and then they sort of devise it. They figure out what works and what doesn't. For most of us, it'll probably involve some form of training. And since this is not only a podcast about acting, I feel like I should say that any form of artistic creation involves emotional risk on some part, I think. There's stuff I wrote about in the method, which is just it's about 20th century acting. Yeah. And I still got emotionally kind of fucked up by it. And June, I'm sure in your book about the history of lesbian culture through the spaces in which that culture has occurred, there's plenty of real serious stuff that's like hard to take and deal with and live in and be immersed in and write about. And, you have to figure out how to take care of yourself. For me, as I've said many times on this podcast, I have a partner I talk to about it. I have a therapist I talk to about it. I have other writers, but there's things you got to do. You got to figure out how to do it.
Yeah, true. Isaac, as we've established, you are an authority on acting. We've talked about how Barry deals with acting. I want you to tell me your other favorite TV shows or movies about the profession. Who did it well?
Oh, man. I mean, there are a ton of them, so I just want to focus on one because I feel like it needs to be rediscovered once every 7 or 8 years or so to bring it back into the discourse, and that is the unbelievable 3-season dramedy Slings and Arrows. It's maybe my favorite show. I know many TV critics for whom it's their favorite show. Each season is about a big summer Shakespeare festival based on Stratford, Ontario, putting on at least one of Shakespeare's plays. In the first season, it's about a production of Hamlet. In the second season, it's a production of the Scottish play. And in the third season, it's a production of King Lear. And in each season, there's major resonances between what's going on in the play and this kind of backstage farce that evolves. So, for example, in the first season, the head of the theater has died, and his wayward protege, who suffered a mental breakdown many years ago and now runs an experimental theater company, is brought on to finish this production of Hamlet as the director. And of course, it was a production of Hamlet during which he lost his mind. And while he is directing it, the ghost of the dead director starts visiting him so that they can argue about the production. It also has Marvelous Mrs. Maisel's Luke Kirby and a pre-fame Rachel McAdams in it. But what's great about it is that the conversations they have about theater are very real. The conversations they have about interpretation of the plays are real. Those folks really know their shit about Shakespeare and they really care about it. But even if you don't know that, they fill it all with personal stakes on a really serious level. And it's really, really funny. So I highly could not more highly recommend Slings and Arrows.
We've got to end this show right now because I've got to go rewatch Slings and Arrows one more time.
Paul Gross, if you're listening, come on working.
Oh my God. Listeners, we hope you enjoyed the show. If you have, remember to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. That way you will never miss an episode. And just a reminder that by joining Slate Plus, you get ad-free podcasts, extra segments on shows like this one, whole other episodes of shows like Slow Burn and Big Mood, Little Mood, and you'll never hit a paywall on the Slate site. To learn more, go to slate.com/workingplus.
Thank you so much to Sarah Goldberg and to our producer, Cameron Drews, who always deserves a standing ovation. We'll be back next week with June's conversation with prolific and beloved mystery novelist Ellen Hart. She'll be talking about a moment that all people, whether creative or not, confront, but that has specific challenges and meanings to artists. Namely, when do you retire? Until then, get back to work.
Hey everybody, it's Tim Heidecker. You know me, Tim and Eric, Bridesmaids, and Fantastic Four. I'd like to personally invite you to listen to Office Hours Live with me and my co-hosts, DJ Doug Pound.
Hello.
And Vic Berger.
Howdy.
Every week we bring you laughs, fun, games, and lots of other surprises. It's live. We take your Zoom calls.
Music.
We love having fun. Excuse me?
Songs. Vic said something. Music.
Songs.
Music.
I like having fun. I like to laugh. I like to meet people who can make me laugh. Please subscribe now.